Hi, good morning. And today is 8 a.m. London time. And every week Zimmer and Peacock does this webinar for our ZP Developer Zone members. And this is that webinar. I'm just making sure that we're going live. So just give me a second while I just check some things out. But yeah, every week we'd like to do this webinar for our members. Make sure that hi, good morning. Yeah, everything's fine. Okay, so every week, 8 a.m, we do this webinar for our members, and so I'll just jump straight into it. I will anyway. Right, so I do put this slide up quite often, but I will be very quick. Obviously, we have the ZP Academy. There are some free courses on the Academy, so if you're a ZP member, please hop over to the Academy. We have the Developer Zone website, and there's a very active forum there where questions get asked, and we are answering them in the forum. We do have collaborations. It's probably worth saying one of the ZP Developer Zone members is actually in the UK at the moment, and he'll be coming on site with us pretty soon to do a collaboration. It's also probably worth just saying on the job front, there's a postdoc going at USN, which is University of Southern Norway, which is probably worth taking a look at. And we do have some PhDs advertised as well on the jobs forum. So let me jump into it because obviously we like to be efficient with your time. So every week we respond to the research forum, and don't. And if you think you have a good answer to one of the questions that comes up on the forum, please reply. And I just want to say as well that somebody asked me this week whether I thought we should open up an undergraduates group on the Developer Zone. I thought it was a good idea. So if you guys think it's a good idea, just let me know. So as I say, questions come into the forum. The questions are often around things like biosensing. So we use this webinar to kind of respond. The questions that we had this week were, can we coat gold electroplated silver traces with activation solutions? So I'll discuss that. And what's the thickness of the gold in the ZP PCB electrodes? And the quick answer is 25 micrometers or 25 microns. If you're using American, they call it like 1 mil. But that 1 mil means 1/1000th of an inch, so it's quite confusing. But the quick answer is it's about 25 micrometers, or 25 microns, or 1 mil if you're in US terms. But I will dig into this a little bit deeper. So we had 2 questions this week, and we're going to sort of dig into the answers a little bit deeper now. Just to say that we've been putting material out about gold electrodes for quite some time. It's probably worth saying that, we were putting out information, sort of on gold electrodes starting in about 2018. I just want to say that, originally we started off making gold electrodes by screen printing and by vapor deposition. And I'm going to put these links later on the web, so on the YouTube description, because it probably be worth looking. The vapor deposited gold is essentially smoother, but of course smoothness is a benefit and can be a boon and a disadvantage. The disadvantage is obviously smoothness means that you essentially have less surface area. Oops, a daisy. Let me just go up slightly. Smoothness means that you have less surface area. Roughness with the screen printing means you have more surface area. I think with vapor deposition you can make finer features. So if you're considering vapor deposition and screen printing, I think screen printing is generally quite good down to 200 micrometer type features, but vapor deposition can get you a lot smaller than that. I think on balance screen printing is lower cost, but really if you want to know whether to use vapor deposition gold or screen printed gold, it probably depends on the application, the design, so there's not much of an answer, but at ZP we do use both of these things. Now the question was actually regarding PCBs, PCB Gold, so I will answer that now. Now it's probably worth saying at ZP we use all sorts of golds. We use vapor deposited on glass. It's not my favourite because glass is not the best material to kind of use if your end user, you know, essentially glass can kind of cause a risk with the end user, so it's not my favourite material. You know, lots of people do like it, but just kind of concerned sometimes if you're trying to make a product for real clients or real customers, you've got to be careful with glass. But we deposit on glass. We also do PCB gold, so essentially making gold electrodes using really printed circuit board type processes. I think there's really only a few companies that do this commercially. We do this commercially, and it's not as easy as people necessarily think. We also do screen printed gold, and then we also do vapor deposition on polymers. And I think in terms of scalability and cost, I prefer gold electrodes, and I quite like vapor deposited on polymer. So if I was looking for a kind of, I mean at ZP, we always look at things through the lens of, can we generally commercialize this? So, I would say, yeah, if I was genuinely trying to commercialize something, then screen printed gold and vapor deposition on polymer is good. I'll discuss PCB in now, and I'll also put this link in later on. I mean, it's probably worth saying, just this week, this is one of our scientists all run in the lab, and they've been testing these vapor deposited electrodes. So they're quite simple electrodes. They're on a polymer, and then, I mean, luckily at Zimmer and Peacock, because we are biosensor developers and manufacturers, we do screen printed electrodes and vapor deposited electrodes, but because of that electrochemistry, it's not the nicest cyclovoltammetry I've ever seen, but we are able to electrochemically characterize these materials and at least check they work. And this one did work. We checked it with probably ferrocyanide. So we made some gold sputter electrodes, and we did some cyclovoltammetry just this week to characterize them. So that's why I really like the webinar on the forum, because when we're speaking about things, it's not because, it's not in some abstract fashion. Literally, this was done this week, just happened to be happening in the lab. So when we come here to the developer zone and we are chatting with you guys, it's from a position of, this is what we do in, day out, and week to week. Just want to talk about the problems with PCB. So the question was, how thick is the gold? And it's about 25 micrometers. But I just want to give you a really big health warning when using PCB as an electrode for as an electrode for biosensors. And I might actually add a caveat in on this, but here's a gold electrode. This is probably about, the diameter of the circle will be approximately 7 millimeters, just to give you a kind of sense of it. So it's a small PCB. We take this PCB, we do some cyclovoltammetry on it, and then afterwards you notice these little features. Now what these features are is actually corrosion spots, and I'm going to now, so I think that gold PCB is a good way of manufacturing electrodes, and we do it and we sell them. But you've also got to be quite careful. Don't be disappointed if you make some like home PCBs and it doesn't work too well. I think the answer is this: if you're doing potentiometry, then you're probably less at risk. But if you're doing amperometry or voltammetry, then I think you're more at risk. And now the reason I say this is for this reason. In potentiometry, you're not putting a voltage onto the electrode. You're just allowing the electrode to generate its own voltage. So in terms of the power or the energy that you apply to the electrode, in potentiometry it's actually quite small, or theoretically it's kind of almost zero. Now in amperometry, with a glucose sensor, you're applying 650 millivolts. So what that means is you're trying to oxidize the electrodes. So the reason that these pinholes come about is because underneath the PCB there's something called a seed layer, which will be some more reactive metals. Now this seed layer is meant to be covered up, but essentially it's very hard. I mean, we've spent years trying to perfect this. It's very hard to get a good coating of gold over that seed layer. So you apply this voltage, but actually there's little pinholes in the gold, and the underlying something like nickel or maybe chromium starts corroding, and you get a massive current. So you know something's instantly wrong, and when you then visually inspect it, you get these little pits or holes. So I said that that's more a problem when you're doing amperometry and voltammetry, because in those applications you're actually applying essentially voltage, and voltage is energy, and energy or power can then help accelerate this corrosion, and so a small pinhole could become a much bigger hole because you're putting energy onto it. It's less of a problem with potentiometry because you're not applying this outside voltage of hundreds of millivolts. So the answer to the question was, what's the thickness of your gold? And I'm saying it's about 25 micrometers. I'm also saying don't be too disappointed if you might have look at something that looks very pristine. You might do some cyclovoltammetry on it, and you might get some very, very high currents, kind of hundreds of microamps that you weren't otherwise expecting, and then maybe even touch into some milliamps, at which point, when you get that kind of thing going on, you've either got a short, but if you're using a PCB, you might even have corrosion. And we've seen it so that the corrosion is so fast, you can literally see this kind of precipitate and this blue color appearing as you oxidize the underlying seed layer. So I will I'll also put this link in the description underneath the video as well. So it was a simple enough question, and I've answered it in quite a long way. And the short answer is 25 micrometers. The long answer is be careful, and whether PCB or not works for you depends on how well you fabricate it, and it also depends on the type of assay that you're going to try and apply to this PCB Gold as well. But I do wish you good luck. The other question then was that we had, can we coat gold electroplated silver traces with your activation solutions for glucose, sodium, potassium and lactate on a flexible substrate? Alright, so I think I'm understanding the question correctly. So I'm imagining that there's a substrate. When I say substrate, I should sort of, there's a ceramic, or in this case a flexible electronic that might look like this. I'm showing you the back side at the moment, but we often call that the substrate, and then we print something on the front side of it. Let me just, so I'm imagining that you've got this flexible substrate, you've printed a silver track on it, and you've printed a gold track on top of that. I'm assuming that, and then you're asking, one of the questions you're asking is, can we put the ZP glucose or lactate formulation on top of that gold? The quick answer is you should be okay. It's just, you just got to take into account what I just said about the PCB, because I think the key here is that you've mentioned, in the previous, I was talking about PCBs. PCBs and that kind of gold can have underlying seed layers. You've got to be a little bit careful if you've got a seed layer under there. But I think you can put these formulations onto a gold electrode. If there's any kind of hole in that gold electrode and the silver is coming through, you will definitely get an oxidation of the underlying silver, and you'll get a very large current, and it's not due to the glucose, it's due to the corrosion. So I'm saying yes, you should be okay, but you know, the nice thing about ZP is, I mean, you know, we put a lot of data up there, so you can expect, you know, signals that look like this, and if they don't look like this, then especially if they look much too high, then that generally tells you that you may be oxidizing the silver. So you should be okay, but be careful of that silver underneath the gold. If the silver's pointing through or is in any kind of contact, when you apply the 650 millivolts, the silver will immediately become silver chloride. You'll get a massive current due to the oxidation of the silver. And I'm going to put some of these links in down below as well. I mean, yeah. I mean, we do print this kind of material on our platinum and gold electrodes, and it works fine. But we're using cool. Seppi has just joined. So we do add our formulations to platinum and gold. Just be careful of that silver track, that any kind of contact with the solution, and you'll get a massive current due to the oxidation of silver to silver chloride. The other part of the question was, can they put the potassium and sodium formulations onto these gold electrodes that they're fabricating as well? So you've got your silver track, you've got your gold, I think, on top of it. You might have your silver as your reference, and then the question is, can they put the potassium or the sodium formulation onto the gold electrodes? Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think we have actually tried. The thing about this kind of setup is you've got gold as your working electrode, and you've probably got silver chloride as your reference electrode. So that means you've got two different or dissimilar metals together, and then you put a solution on them. So when you've got two dissimilar metals in wet contact with each other, you've generally set up a battery, because you know most batteries are based on the idea of two metals of different reactivity in contact by an electrolyte. So you've generally set up a battery. So I'm a little bit concerned that actually if you do try to put our formulations on top of a gold electrode and your reference electrode is silver, you will have a voltage just due to the difference between gold and silver. And then on top of that, then you'll have a voltage due to the sensing of the potassium or sodium. But I mean, at ZP, I would generally suggest that you actually use the carbon electrode. Now, if you're kind of stuck where you are, then my other suggestion then is just to hand paint on some carbon. We've got some, you know, it's not a very glamorous name, but we've got some paintable carbon. You can literally take a paintbrush and paint on some carbon. So the question was, can we use the sodium potassium formulations on our gold electrode? I'm a bit concerned that you'll have a gold electrode and a silver chloride reference electrode. That means you might have a small low voltage battery set up, so you'll have a voltage that's not due to the sensing of potassium or sodium, but you'll have a voltage due to essentially these two dissimilar metals. If you think you've got that, then you can, and we often use carbon in these electrodes, by the way. If you think you've got a problem because of the gold, then just hand paint some carbon on top of the gold pad, and that should fix your problems. And I'll put some links in the, when we stop live stream, I'll put some links in the video. So we had two questions this week. One of the questions was, how thick is the gold in your PCB? So I want to give a big health warning on PCBs. The underlying seed layers on PCBs can lead to corrosion. But the answer to your question is 25 micrometers, but I really suspect you're going to run into corrosion problems. And then you should be able to use the glucose and lactate formulation on your gold electrodes. But be careful of that silver track, because it can lead to corrosion. I'm a bit more hesitant on the sodium and potassium, because there you're doing potentiometric sensing, and I'm a bit worried that the gold and the silver chloride will set up a little battery or a little voltage of their own, and then your signal will be riding on top of this other signal. So you've kind of you'll have a baseline that might be a bit sensitive, and the baseline will be due to the gold and the silver chloride. I just wanted to go to Julie quickly. I'm really pleased. I'm getting a lot of feedback now that people are really starting to get into Julie, and I'm really pleased about it. A couple of comments about Julie. So I'm just navigating. Yeah. So what I'll do is, if you go to our website, under knowledge base, there's Julie. There's a login page here, and there's the learning center here. I know now the learning center is useful because just contact us and we'll give you 100% discount on the learning module, so don't worry about that. But there's test data here, and today I'm going to use the chronopotentiometry data, so you can download this test data. Last week we did chronoamperometry, and previously we've done EIS, but I just want to return to Julia, essentially every week, because I just want to kind of keep on reminding on it, and also saying, look, sign up, get an account, get the data, start practicing with it. Now, so the next thing I want to talk about is, here is Julie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the I've downloaded the chronopotentiometry data that we have on our website. So I've previously downloaded it. There are 4 files, and I'm going to upload them now. I mean, so Julie at this moment is a great place for storing your data. You can share your data, and you can process your data. I know some of you are very keen on EIS, and we are. We've already done a demonstration on EIS, but we will be making the EIS function better. But today I'm going to do chronopotentiometry, and I have downloaded this data off the website. I've now uploaded it into Julie. I'll go to properties. I'll make sure that I choose potentiometry. I'm now going to go to this PC tab here, and I'm just going to, I have the raw data chosen like that, and it's processing. So now I uploaded 4 files, and it's displaying all 4 files for us. You can essentially see the way our guys work, that they've gone into the lab. So this is time. They've started 4 sensors in parallel, and they've tested at pH 2, pH 3, pH 4, pH 5, etc. And the voltage has changed accordingly. I might just adjust something quickly. And they've adjusted, yeah, and they've changed the pH, and the voltage has changed accordingly. Let me just go into the features now. I know I've done this before, but I just want to kind of, really emphasize it. I'm just going to fit the data, and I'm going to do a statistical evaluation on the data. So to fit the data, I'm going to right click. I'm going to set the line width to 5 to make it a bit narrower, and I'm going to say that you are pH 2. Now I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say you are pH 3. And I'm sorry that this is so boring, me doing all this, but let me just do it this once, because in some ways the alternative to doing this is very manual. 2, 3, 4. Each time I'm just right clicking, and then I'm putting in the pH. Right, 8, pH 8, pH 9. Right, done. I mean, it's massively powerful. It's essentially now, because what I've done is I've told it, at this time you had this, it was at this pH, at this time it was at this pH, at this time it was at this pH. So it's been able to, I had 4 experiments there, and lots of different concentrations, and within a few clicks it's actually calculated the the calibration curve for all that data, and it's done statistical analysis, told me what my R² value is, told me what my SD is, it's told me it's giving me my, this is quite nice, it shows me calibration concentration versus actual, and done box and whisker type graphs for me. And I know some of you who kind of work in a sort of more regulatory environment, and the nice thing as well is you can spit out these sort of reports as well, so you can have all this as a PDF as well. So I think Julie is essentially, it's a very good tool for storing the data. You can share the data will be there in the cloud for you, so you can get it at home, but it's really good for processing your data and then turning your data actually into reports. So I would still encourage you to get accounts, because the beautiful thing about Julie, it's 100% free. We just want you to adopt it, start using it, give us feedback, let us improve it, because the best way of us making Julie better is the more of you that are using it, then the more feedback we get. I'm just going to look at I've got some questions through. So, all right, yeah. So Ali was just asking a question: how can we tell what the thickness of the PCB Gold is, for example? We literally cut through it and look at it under a microscope. So it's not that clever. If we want to know the roughness of the gold, we do use profilometry, where we literally sort of drag a stylus across the surface and it bounces up and down, and that tells us our roughness. So we do if you ever Google Zimmer Peacock profilometry, you'll see that we do profilometry to measure the roughness. To measure the thickness, we literally saw it in half and have a look under a microscope. So it's not exactly rocket science what we're doing. So appreciate the question coming in live. I hope that helps. So I might just, and I also would really ask everyone to start signing up for Julie if you haven't done so already. So I just want to do a summary. It's 8:27. I do appreciate, it's great that everyone's come again. So every week we look at the live forum. We look at questions that come through on the live forum. We got questions this week about gold electrodes, and whether you can use, let's say, gold electrodes for measuring glucose and lactate, and I was a bit more positive on that, but I gave a warning about sodium and potassium. And then I also did a bit more of a demonstration on Julie, so there is free data up on the website. You can download it, and that means you can just start playing with Julie even before you've got your own data. Okay, so it's 8:28. I appreciate the questions. Ali and Seppi, I really appreciate you being here this week. And Hasim, as always. Like I say, ZP Developer Zone really is a collaboration, and I think the proof is, even now we've got one of the members in the UK, and he's going to be coming into our lab pretty soon, and we'll be working together. Okay, thanks very much, guys. I appreciate it. I will be doing a news live streaming webinar, but it's at 8 p.m. on Sunday, so I appreciate that. For Southeast Asia, you should all be asleep, but there is a live streaming news webinar at 8 p.m. on Sundays. Yeah, and I thanks very much.